Panic exploded, the townspeople rushed to flee, and the lonely Shield calmly watched as a colossal threat approached them. Shieldstone Golem rose, his heavy body crushed buildings, and the air filled with dust. Desperate people raised a weak fence and shouted warnings as the Golem fists crashed into their defense. The shield stepped forward and summoned a flickering barrier that effortlessly stopped the Golem's destructive blow. The villagers froze in admiration. The mage's barrier stretched around the entire city. The spectators recognized its power and understood. Only a court mage can create such barriers. People shouted angrily, "Save us first, not that little white cat next to him." Calmly he explained his plan, showing the huge dome that protected everyone from the collapsing golem. In a few days the huge hall exploded with shouts of joy celebrating Shield's engagement to the aristocrat. Elaine nervously grabbed the hem of her dress, preparing to confess something important before the celebration continued. Elaine forced herself to smile, feeling that Shield's answer would shatter the quiet hope she silently carried. Shield loudly pronounced his vow. Joyful shouts rang out as he proudly declared that their names were united forever. Suddenly the soldiers surrounded them, a commotion spread around, and the celebration instantly turned into a sinister gathering. The stern commander loudly announced the exile of Shield, accusing him of a treacherous coup against the royal family. Stunned, Shield loudly protested, insisting that it was all a conspiracy created to ruin his life. The officials showed forged documents and claimed that they had allegedly found secret plans hidden right in Shield's residence. Elaine confessed that she had entered his room, insisting that she only wanted to understand what he was doing at night. Shield looked at her trembling apologies and felt that her confession had already condemned him before the authorities. He clenched his fists, recalling how his barriers protected everyone, and now those same barriers were called possible betrayal. Surrounded by soldiers, he confirmed the king's involvement, and accepting exile stood with a heart heavy from distrust. The guards took Shield away and he jokingly spoke about severance pay in response. He heard only a cold refusal. He forced a smile, waved goodbye to everyone, and hid bitterness behind a polite goodbye. Alone in the carriage, he thought sadly, unable to understand why they hated him. He admitted that he liked parties and attention, but had never even thought that it could spark envy. Remembering how he boasted about the engagement, he blushed, realizing that his happiness had probably pushed powerful enemies to act. Shield recalled those contemptuous looks and insisted fervently that he had always worked diligently and never committed any crimes. In childhood, they laughed at him because of his weak magic, but every day he honed his barriers with unwavering determination. Years passed, and without even noticing, he surpassed everyone and became the strongest barrier mage in the kingdom. But that gigantic obstacle he built to protect the country was not meant to be eternal. Looking out the window, he wondered if they had a secret plan in case of failure. From the carriage, Shield watched the barrier intently, knowing it would soon reach its final limit. He anxiously thought whether he would ever manage to explain that those barriers were not eternal before he was suddenly exiled. Arriving in the city, he had only a pouch of coins and his valuable watch with him. He studied the map, deciding that the south would give him safety and prosperity to rebuild his broken life. Finally smiling, he sat down to eat, resolutely determined to start everything anew with all his strength. Relaxed and satisfied, Shield thought that exile might not be so terrible after all, enjoying the food and wine. Suddenly, behind his back, a resonant rumble shattered the silence and instantly drew his alert attention. He stepped out onto the street, thanked the tavern owner, but felt that three cloaked figures were persistently following him. In a narrow alley, he sharply turned around and, with a demand in his voice, asked why they were following him. The strangers drew their blades and said that he would die here, without answering any of Shield's questions. The masked attackers rushed simultaneously. Their weapons were aimed directly at the Shield, and the attack was perfectly coordinated. Calmly studying their stance, he instantly recognized the disciplined technique taught to the kingdom's elite knights. Shield directly asked if they were from the Royal Knight Corps sent to silence him. Without waiting for an answer, he raised his palm and instantly a hexagonal barrier rose around them. In a stern voice he declared, "Destroy the weapons," and in an instant all their blades shattered into pieces. The swords broke into fragments upon impact. Shards scattered around the Shield's invisible force easily crushed their blades. One assassin, with a sly smile full of confidence, said that Shield would not withstand the next hidden magical technique. Standing amid the fragments floating in the air, Shield calmly said that his training had been completed from the very beginning. The attackers summoned gravity magic, causing the ground to crack beneath the steadfast feet of Shield. Unfazed, he raised his eyes upward and promised that he would simply use the same magic against them. One assassin instantly created a powerful reflection barrier, deflecting the strike of gravity magic that Shield returned. He calmly admitted that he possessed only defensive magic, but as soon as the spell was reflected, he gained full control over it. Shield interrogated them and learned that more assassins would soon come to prevent him from returning to royal favor. Unmoved, he nodded at their warning and snapped his fingers, dispersing the remnants of magic around them. Standing at full height, he shouted that no opponent would ever be able to strike him again. Shield faced the weakened assassins, preparing to leave them behind and continue on his uncertain path. He realized that all routes both south and north were under threat, so he had to reconsider his path. Reluctantly, he turned east, more afraid of insects than danger, and vowed to take revenge on the night captain. Stopping, he felt an unpleasant creeping sensation and realized a huge beetle had landed on his shoulder. Screaming in panic, Shield ran wildly, while the insect mercilessly latched onto his face. Suddenly, a huge dragon landed in front of Shield, and its piercing eyes fixed directly on him. He sighed nervously, pretending to be calm, and whispered to himself that it was just a dragon. A voice sounded, reproaching him for ignoring it and demanding immediate attention. Shield stepped back, stunned, not believing that the creature really spoke human language. The dragon roared. It was Bahamut, who just out of curiosity wanted to devour Shield. Shield calmly raised his hand, creating a barrier that instantly repelled all physical force. The dragon lunged forward but hit the shield and fiercely bounced back. Dust rose and the monster staggered, confused before the unbreakable protective power of magic. Shield calmly explained that he had just repelled the dragon's attack using his advanced barrier reflection technique. The dragon roared furiously, demanding answers, unable to comprehend how this could have happened at all. Shield raised his palm again and with perfect barrier magic repelled the dragon's fierce strike. Watching the dragon roll away, he calmly noted how far it had been thrown back. Looking around the shattered earth nearby, Shield realized the strike cracked the ground around him. The dragon turned, irritated and disappointed, loudly demanding to know why the human barrier could not be broken. Shield answered simply, "A true barrier will not break if it is truly perfect." He had honed barrier magic for 10 years, confident it was better than all previously created protective techniques. Suddenly, the huge dragon roared, gathering energy. Its scales were perfect, without a single weak spot. Calmly raising his hand, he summoned the advanced barrier that blocked the colossal destructive breath of the dragon. He watched as the vortex of energy thickened. Prepared, he strengthened the barrier and tensed before the strike. The dragon unleashed a dazzling blast of flame. The barrier creaked under the pressure and he stood, trembling. He looked closely at the burning attack and understood. It was more like lava than any pure light. Calmly, he activated his strongest defense. A barrier appeared, ready to repel all magic flying toward him. The dragon's furious attack was reflected back. Its own power passed through the scales, and a painful scream escaped it. Smoke rose as he watched. The massive body of the dragon collapsed. It did not withstand the reflected force. Standing amid the devastation, he decided to follow the path left by the fallen dragon. Looking over the scorched valley, he realized that this devastation resembled a catastrophe more than any curse. He cautiously approached and noticed a figure emerging from the blackened earth, quietly murmuring about the chaos. Before him appeared a girl with horns. She was indifferent to the heat. She boldly shouted, challenging him. With a sly smile, she praised his strength. Her gaze was sharp. She sensed his overwhelming magical power. She removed her mask. It was Bahamut, a dragon reborn in human form by ancient transformation magic. Embarrassed, he shyly asked her to dress. She agreed. She understood that people dislike nudity before strangers. With a snap of her fingers, she summoned clothes. He looked up, instantly amazed by her elegant transformation. He doubted her choice of attire. She cut him short. Don't expect excessive modesty from me. Bahamut admitted that he was the first human she could not devour. Instead, she decided to accompany him. She smiled and offered to guide him, and he agreed, intrigued by what she was secretly preparing. Suddenly, she lunged forward, claws ready, saying that he had become reckless and unprepared. Her fangs bit in, but the invisible barrier crumbled them. He apologized. It was a reflex magical defense. Irritated, she was gently pushed away by his barrier, and she slid over the rocky ground. He calmly turned around and gestured for her to follow him. She wiped her tears, ashamed of her defeat. Side by side, they went into the forest. She grumbled, complaining that she was hungry. Shield got off the main road, confused. She sternly pointed, correcting his careless direction. Shield firmly demanded that she lead them forward. He was suspicious that she silently walked behind without a clear purpose. They argued because the supplies were dwindling, and she insisted that he had eaten everything before they reached the city. She admitted that centuries had passed since she tasted human food. Today, the soup tempted her more than she expected. Walking side by side, she gave her ancient name Faye. He accepted it without hesitation. She explained that dragons avoided cities humans tasted unpleasant, and revenge bred endless, irritating complications. Impatient, she demanded to hurry with the bath. He pretended to be confident, but inside he was completely confused. Shield realized that Fazi's advice helped avoid threats, but her keen gaze made him blush uncontrollably. Seeing the distant towers, he asked, his voice trembling from nerves. She waved it off, carefully hiding her own curiosity. Finally, they reached Aghain bustling streets, promised supplies, shelter, and possibly answers to the questions of their journey. They stepped into the city, stunned by the luxury and the hum of laughter. He immediately began begging her for food. He loudly said he wanted to live easily. She lagged behind and doubted that his plans would last long. In the dark caves, he fought monsters, and although the fight was chaotic, determination shone in his eyes. Their attacks completely failed. The monsters stared blankly, no damage because there was not enough magic. A quarrel broke out. He blamed weakness, and she insisted that his barrier magic alone would not solve all problems. Inside, he was falling apart and sank into despair. Unable to defeat even weak monsters, he felt the second chance was hopeless. Suddenly, he extended a valuable compass. His eyes lit up. He hoped it would save his broken dignity. Count Albert warmly welcomed them, and Shield and Face went inside, surprised by such sincere hospitality. Shield nervously thanked the Count. He was entrusted with teaching magic to Albert's mysterious daughter. They discussed plans for dinner. Shield insisted that survival was above all, and rumors whispered that the daughter had rare talents. Shield panicked. What if the girl demands complex spells? The Fae looked away to the side, indifferent to everything. Count Albert led them to dinner. The table was laden with luxurious dishes shimmering in the candlelight. When Faye said his name, his mind went blank. Relief and anxiety intertwined in his chest. They feasted wildly. Faye devoured everything in a row. And Shield finally felt that all the travel difficulties today were somewhat worth it. While Shield greedily ate, the Count hesitated, still wanted to talk about his talented daughter. He stated that hunger excuses everything. Hunger is more important than manners. Faye looked away, again unimpressed. On the opposite side of the table, Faye was enjoying the meal. The quiet girl with a fragile posture radiated a sinister power. He did not even try but felt a wild magic. The Count's daughter frightened him with her hidden power. In panic, he drank desperately. She was too strong. He was afraid of immediately losing this tutor position. Sitting quietly beside him, he was afraid of how it would end. But in his soul, he had already accepted that he would be fired. Count Albert introduced Shield and Faye as mentors. Shield trembled, terrified that his weakness would be exposed. Amelia burst into tears of joy, her tears sparkling, and with a trembling voice she praised her father's kindness. Father hurriedly moved, pushing her towards studying. Shield awkwardly greeted her, feeling completely unprepared. Amelia became serious. She demanded the truth, and there was no place for excuses or lies in her tone. Shield froze. Faye crossed her arms over her chest. Both did not know how to respond to her suspicious, unblinking gaze. Amelia calmly examined them. When she recognized that the pocket watch was real, her suspicions slightly subsided. She demanded the truth about his origin. Shield stammered, fearing exposure and the shame of her father. Her gaze sharpened. Shield nervously repeated, unsure if he would survive if he confessed all this tangled truth. She pointed at Helena's colossal barrier. Everyone knew it, and Shield blushed, remembering how he appeared. He shyly admitted that he created the barrier. She froze in shock, not understanding why he was now ashamed. Amelia's voice became fierce. She spoke about the weight their title bore before 10 million frightened people. Shield again insisted that he belonged to them. Amelia declared that she would not tolerate fake charlatans wasting time. He confessed he was expelled. His barrier outraged the nobles. Amelia laughed mockingly. She was sure no kingdom would expel heroes. Desperate, she asked Faye for support. Faye refused, reminding him that she came only for her work. Amelia stormed out, stomping with rage. Faye silently agreed to watch, ignoring Shield's pleas to help convince her. Amelia stood confidently in the yard. Everyone fell silent and watched as magical power began to gather around her. Shield noticed her determination. The tattered training doll silently told how hard she had tried to master the spell. Fire blazed in her palm, and Shield wondered if such advanced techniques came naturally to her. The elements swirled around her. She combined fire, water, and wind, ready to release them together as battle magic. With unwavering focus, Amelia unleashed the energy. Waves of power surged forward, vividly demonstrating her stunning potential. Shield watched in admiration. She easily cast enhancement spells, weaving supportive magic into her attacks. The training dummy was hit by waves of destructive force, barely remaining standing. Energy flashed past the dummy. Its cracked body creaked under the pressure of her spell. Amelia exhaled calmly. Though she had power, she knew that perfection required even more practice. Shield sincerely praised her performance, but she looked back coldly and insisted that he remain silent forever and not interfere. Shield boldly challenged her and insisted that only battle training would teach her to feel true magic. She couldn't stand it and barked, demanding proof. Announcing that her magic was exhausted, she immediately proposed hand-to-hand combat. Shield panicked. Weren't the court magicians taught to fight? He begged the fairy to fight instead of him. Faye lazily refused, fearing that she might accidentally kill Amelia and ruin the cozy dinners in the mansion. Amelia teased him. Shield got ready, determined not to fall behind her, although anxiety in him only grew. Amelia rushed fiercely. Shield barely reacted as her fists sliced through the air toward him. Her eyes opened in shock. His barrier absorbed her strike without flinching or retreating. Shield calmly admitted that his body remained protected. Amelia gritted her teeth and immediately demanded another round. She barely released a weak punch upward. held the shield firmly and was sure it would hit him in the face. His eyes widened. She in turn crouched low. Her real attack unexpectedly came from below. Shield smirked confidently. Wherever Amelia struck, his barrier would deflect every blow. She demanded answers. Shield smirked maliciously, as if the survivors were still at work, and Amelia reluctantly allowed him to stay. She announced the victory in delight. Faye ignored him. Amelia turned away, barely hiding irritation and reluctant respect. He promised to teach her forever. She muttered threats, still planning to eventually drive him away. Later, Shield shouted to her window and the staff panicked, saying that Amelia had suddenly fallen ill. Amelia lay pale in bed, her breathing shallow and the fever rising with frightening force. The servants fussed anxiously over her illness, and then Shield stepped forward, insisting he would try to heal her. Faye quietly entered, offering help. Shield turned, resolutely deciding to handle the crisis himself. He held his breath and confidently declared that it was his duty as her appointed tutor. Raising his hand, he focused his power. Faye quietly wondered if he would succeed in healing. She suddenly appeared in the doorway, holding countless treats and insistently demanding to see the girl's face. Her determined eyes met hurriedly, as if asking why this unexpected tense confrontation was happening here. Approaching cautiously, she admitted she had heard rumors that she was healed, but uncertainty ruled her heart. Grabbing her wrist, she insisted on proving that the magic was real and promised another chance to show her worth. Outside the great mansion, she resolutely declared, the duel would continue until someone surrendered without any limits. Shield confidently laughed and promised that she would never regret this duel, even if death took her quickly. She summoned countless magical spears, the sky instantly filled with stunning, dazzling, destructive energy. Her voice challenged him, demanding proof of his justification while he prepared a measured response. The spears flew forward, tearing through the air and seeking to crush any fragile obstacle he created. He calmly raised his palm, activated a barrier, and effortlessly and fearlessly absorbed her attacks. Her most powerful attacks shattered against his barrier, causing no harm, and she froze in shock at his mysterious defense. Filled with determination, she gathered a vortex of energy around herself and launched into a relentless assault. Hovering in the air, he prepared to respond decisively, calmly gathering immense energy under his outstretched hand. Shield raised his palm. His unwavering focus and precise control instantly neutralized her chaotic magic. She clenched her fist, released shimmering droplets of energy, and shouted defiantly to shake his calm. She unleashed a giant wave, resolutely determined to finally overcome his all-consuming magical shields. Looking at the turbulent water, he calmly acknowledged its danger, assessing the strength of the current without losing vigilance. Smiling, he absorbed the attack, activated the magic-absorbing barrier, and began to drain power from it. With a confident look, he asked what plan she still had left for a desperate counterattack attempt. Raindrops suddenly began to fall, and he wondered in surprise, was it just nature or her doing? She unleashed icy magic, with a mocking tone in her voice as frost spread around her resolute stance. He looked down, not believing his eyes. Thick ice gripped his ankles and instantly bound his movements. Laughing, she hurled dozens of sharp icicles at him, demanding that he finally surrender to her growing power. Instead of fear, he loudly praised her talent, admiring her clever and relentless magical creativity. But when his hand glowed darkly, he prepared to strike back with incredible hidden power. He calmly apologized, explaining how versatile his barrier was, while shards safely fell around his feet. She screamed in despair, accusing him of cheating, and he calmly asked about her next move. Breathing heavily, she leaned on a damaged mannequin after endless failed attacks. She had no strength left. Desperately, she demanded to know what magic he used, promising anything for an explanation. She blushed, clenched her fist, and finally called him sensei, acknowledging his unquestionable superiority. He proudly admitted that he only used barrier magic, smiling while she threatened him for boasting too much. He calmly explained that despite this, he still became a respected court mage. Her eyes spun in disbelief, was stunned to learn that he was the legendary Shield of Rayleigh's. She screamed that it was impossible, clutching her head, and he, laughing, confirmed that it was him. Unable to comprehend everything, she suddenly turned and ran away, screaming from confused shame. She shyly peeks into the dining room, seeing a table covered with numerous dishes. While nibbling on bread, she asked again if he was really that great shield mage. She blushed and with tears in her eyes apologized for her rudeness, admitting how uncouth she probably looked. She confessed that he was her lifelong idol, and although she sincerely adored him, she apologized for her disrespect. Sitting next to him, she nervously glanced, wondering what Lady Faye's relation was to the legendary Great Shield. Chewing her food, she explained that the dragon simply followed every time their attacks were easily repelled. Naming himself Bahamut, the dragon politely greeted, and an ancient memory surfaced within her. She recalled the leadership of the dragon force had not decided if nothing changes soon, an invasion threatens. Full of determination, he agreed to help decide who would become their leader, and ignored her desperate plea not to interfere. She warned to provoke the dragons and a war might ignite, destroying the world as centuries ago among the gods. From among the trees emerged a huge dragon and looked down at them with the gaze of an ancient threat. She nervously pointed, reminding everyone that they had reached the forest entrance much earlier than she had hoped. Gripped by horror, she recognized the creature Nidhuge, the very terrifying and powerful lord of the Black Dragons. The Black Dragon grimly declared that he would lead them and unleash war if humans dared to meddle in dragon affairs. Two colossal dragons faced each other, their roars shaking the mountains, and tension ignited the confrontation. She held her breath, not believing anyone could stand against the dragons, while he calmly carried her to safety. The dragons clashed in a fierce battle, shockwaves tearing the forest apart as unstoppable force burst between ancient enemies. Shield raised his hand, calm and silent, and she watched, holding her breath in admiration. He activated barrier magic, a shimmering dome enveloped them, and he was determined to fully protect everyone. He smiled and calmly explained that protecting the entire city was not a miracle, but simple work. Lightning tore the sky as dragons clashed above the fortress, and Amelia panicked at the thought that she might one day have to fight them alone. A roaring explosion burst from the dragon's maw, and blinding energy tore the sky apart. They, not believing their eyes, looked up as Bahamut easily deflected the attack. Her power was now undeniable. Stepping forward calmly, Bahamut called it a problem. Her confidence caused alarm despite the furious chaos of the battle around. She indifferently explained that the attack would force them to submit, and they froze at her nonchalance. Amelia grabbed her head. She was stunned that the great Shield and Bahamut so easily defeated the dragon. Shield explained, large barriers attract political games, warning that people will always use any power they can find. Sitting nearby, a nobleman admitted he never imagined behind the barrier was the mage's shield. With pain in his voice, the noble declared that the shield was too important, and he could no longer remain a tutor. Shield slammed the table and demanded why his tutoring was stopped without any clear reason. The elder explained that his magic threatened the balance of power on the continent, so his presence became too dangerous. Shield doubted their decision, suspecting that secret plans were hidden that would make his protective barriers obsolete and completely unnecessary. Shield recalled how his barrier protected Helena. This made him famous abroad, but sparked envy among the nobility. Leaving without gratitude, he heard whispers mocking his barriers and realized that his homeland never valued him. The elder shouted fiercely, condemning Helena's leaders for rejecting powerful magic and acting so foolishly. He sighed heavily and admitted, negotiations with the central government are ongoing and he can do nothing. The mage buried his face in his hands, lamenting how politics destroyed everything he had so diligently protected. Learning about Nidhuge's attack, the elder was gripped by panic. He thought they were fighting creatures worshipped as gods. Spreading golden wings, Faye confessed that she was Bahamut and single-handedly defended the city from Nidhogg. They studied ancient texts about Uri, a place where all peoples revered dragons as gods. As Child watched in disbelief, Faye confirmed everything and the old man anxiously clutched his stomach. The nobleman promised to swear allegiance if the shield remained, but he doubted their promises would ever hold. Standing above the city and gazing into its lights, he asked himself, is there freedom or trust anywhere for someone like him? Despite everything, a luxurious banquet was laid out, and for a moment the tension eased. Everyone watched together with fascination. Faye teased him that he ate everything indiscriminately, and he only wondered why such a luxurious feast. He ate nervously when suddenly he felt her piercing gaze on him. This look strangely unsettled him. Without hesitation, Faye directly stated that she wanted to mate, and her frankness instantly stunned everyone. He doubted the joint journey. He was worried that her intentions were unclear and might threaten his freedom. Faye offered her company to escape the demands of society and live peacefully, traveling together somewhere far away. He repeatedly asked Amelia to show the way and realized she was repeating yes in vain, no matter what happened. Amelia clung tightly to him, pretending to be overly affectionate, and he barely kept himself together. Her hands wrapped firmly around his arm, her words hinted at devotion, and anxiety grew within him. Walking between them, he hoped chaos would not erupt, but he felt that something was about to come. Suddenly, a new figure appeared above and confidently announced that they had finally found their target. Frightened, he threw a scream into the air, demanding to know who was suddenly approaching them. The confident beast lady Morel introduced herself as the Holy Sword from the land of Eruz. Morel said that from reconnaissance she learned Riley's from Shield was recently expelled. The queen commanded, and she came personally to escort him as an honored guest. Morel warned that if he refused her invitation, she would take him by force to Irias. Guild politely declined. He decided to go his own way, not to obey royal orders again. Morel calmly agreed and warned that she would wake up in those places, regardless of any protests. With strength hardened by training, she raised the sword, ready to strike instantly and subdue him. His eyes widened. He felt a surge of her power as she now attacked without any hesitation. Shield deflected her blow, summoned a barrier technique specially created to break her mighty weapon. Meryl stepped back, staggering from shock. She did not expect her attack to be so easily repelled. She examined the blade, not believing it survived, and Shield could not understand why it did not shatter. Praising his magic, she proudly told about the origin of the sword, confident that it would not break due to some minor obstacles. Meryl jumped high again, determined to overcome him with another precise and powerful strike. Smiling slyly, she threw him an even greater challenge, preparing a new attack while his defense flickered and changed shape. Shield calmly spread his arms, creating a wide barrier to repel any unexpected attacks. He felt movement around but patiently waited, wondering when Meryl would finally deliver a decisive blow. Meryl rushed into attack, but found that his barrier suddenly turned into an unexpected spherical defense. With a confident smile, Shield activated a physically reflective barrier and instantly returned her attack back. The counterattack hit Meryl with full force, throwing her across the yard before she could recover. With bruises but stubborn, Meryl slowly got up, unwilling to give up though she looked beaten. Shield looked with disbelief, could not believe she was still standing, amazed by her own incredible endurance and determination. Moral admitted that her strikes had failed. His barrier returned all her power back to her. She laughed at his claims to special treatment and said that respect is earned only by strength. Grabbing the sword, she smiled wildly and declared that she would fight until victory became hers. Shield calmly watched, knowing that no matter how fast she would never break his barrier. Morel attacked from all sides, but confidently stated that her efforts were completely futile against his defense. In despair, she prepared the most powerful strike, firmly deciding that this last attack would finally break his shield. She put all of herself into the strike. The blade hit, but the barrier did not break and repelled her force. She slammed against the wall with all her might, and Shield praised her efforts, impressed by her determination. Meryl admitted defeat, shocked that even she, the holy sword, could not touch the power of the shield. Shield awkwardly advised her to take cover, and she demanded why he remained so calm watching. He politely offered his coat, and Meryl, though a bit embarrassed, accepted it with a barely noticeable, grateful smile. She decided to catch her breath and later find another way to catch his barrier magic. When they left together, Shield sighed, suddenly overwhelmed by a strange guilt, and everyone began suggesting to go get something to eat. Meryl stopped Shield and explained that she had to ask about something important that had long been troubling her. Without hesitation, she proposed to him, hoping that he would say yes and become her husband, sharing life with her. Shield froze in shock and the others watched, completely bewildered by her sudden, unexpected proposal. Irius was cornered by a fierce warrior who declared him her husband, stunning his comrades. The warrior insisted that marriage proved her strength, and Irius fled in panic, rejecting her loud proposal. The determined girl exclaimed that Irius belonged only to her and that she was his ideal. The warrior mockingly ridiculed the rival's small breasts, confident that her charm would easily win Irius forever. Another demoness appeared and calmly said that she only wanted to someday soon devour Arya's completely. The demonic girl confessed, her power grows when she devours others, and one day she intends to devour Irius. She promised to wait until Iris grew old, meanwhile giving her an awkward, strained friendship. They solemnly shook hands, agreeing to a strange alliance, and the dragons together witnessed their declaration. The other girls loudly protested, angry that no one asked for their consent to this decision. Resolutely determined, the blonde swore revenge and was confident that her body would eventually surpass the charms of every rival. The hidden figure watched a ruse. Surprisingly, the rumors about his exile turned out to be completely true. A graceful, charming woman appeared, introduced herself as Shield Rayleigh, and confidently greeted everyone around. Gabriel Perily suddenly revealed her true identity and invited Iris to Minentu, enthusiastically praising his rare spatial magic. Iris politely declined her offer, explaining that he wants to stay here and rest for now. Smiling, she instantly disappeared, confessing that she skillfully turned stubborn ones around, leaving no trace. Gabriel lunged at Arya's, resolutely trying to grab him so he wouldn't break free from her hands again. Confused, she crashed into an invisible barrier, neither seeing nor understanding its perfect defense. Raising her hands, she admitted that catching him would be much harder, and powerful magic flared around her. Suddenly, a colossal stone leg crashed down with a roar, shocking the surroundings, while Gabriel hovered nearby with his creation. The giant's eye opened wide, its gaze fiercely fixed on places with an insurmountable crushing force. Gabriel calmly sat on the shoulder of the stone giant and declared that she would forcibly capture Irias. The giant creature rushed forward, its maces smashing houses, while Gabriel warned not to destroy more than necessary around. With a sly smile, she warned Arius, "Don't die," while the giant prepared a devastating blow. Stone fists clenched with terrifying fury, the strike shook the ground and unleashed an unstoppable, foundation-shattering destructive force. Gabriel watched anxiously, barely believing that any barrier could withstand the stunning final attack of her summoned beast. Irius emerged unscathed and calmly scolded Gabriel for scaring him while broken fragments rained around them. He looked around indifferently, and Gabriel firmly decided to keep fighting now. She was not going to give up so easily. Hovering in the air, she summoned a floating stone boulder and demanded that Irius stay and face her power. Gabriel warned him not to trust appearances. She had only shown a fraction of her strength so far. A colossal rock descended, threatening to destroy the city, while Eruz desperately protested against this reckless devastation. The demon girl's side watched irritably as Gabriel's attack dragged everyone into her reckless venture. Screaming in despair, Gabriel ordered the hovering mass to fall, and Irius prepared to fight back. He calmly raised his hand and summoned a barrier, and Gabriel already believed that victory was finally hers. A dazzling shockwave burst outward and shattered the falling stone before it even touched the city. Stunned, Gabriel froze in disbelief, unable to understand how her all-powerful magic had been completely neutralized. Gabriel screamed desperately, promising to teleport far away by force to end this stalemate. Her space magic crashed into Irius's barrier, and the energy exploded loudly between their intertwined powers. When the magic dissipated, Gabriel was left naked and, blinking in shock, looked at the vanished clothes. The girls froze and watched silently, then accused the seats of secretly favoring women with large breasts. Irius's cheeks burned with shame, and he stubbornly claimed it happened accidentally, not due to a deliberate perverse plan. Embarrassed, Irius returned her clothes and insisted she cover herself before an even greater chaos erupted. Gabriel laughed triumphantly and declared that Irius must take responsibility and agree now to become her betrothed. She leaned closer and, boasting, declared that she would surpass all rivals and become the perfect companion in every intimate moment. The two women demanded an answer, pressing the seats without the slightest hesitation to choose between them. Overwhelmed, Irius objected that they were ignoring his feelings, while each woman decided to finally seduce him. Suddenly, a messenger appeared and insisted, everyone must speak formally, and as representatives because they would have to perform before the kingdom's nobles. With a sly smile, the rivals exchanged insults and agreed to talk, although one still swore to eat Irius. Iria nervously stumbled, tried to object, but everyone turned and looked coldly at his hesitant objections. He suddenly felt that something strange was approaching, whispering as if with distrust, while others stood waiting, unaware of the danger. Suddenly, a fierce explosion thundered before them, scattering debris and blinding the street with dazzling light. The dragon girl said that the ancient barrier fell faster than she expected, although she had guarded it for 3 years. Iria stood silently, realizing that a new era had begun, overturning the balance of power in all kingdoms. He sadly looked away, deciding that this conflict was no longer his business nor his concern. In the council hall, leaders gathered and argued tensely about the fate of Irius and his unbreakable magical barrier. Listening quietly, Eruz decided it was time to think about his path into the future. Elder Uri swore to grant lifelong status as a court mage, immense wealth, and a noble title to protect these regions. Calmly, the swordswoman asked permission to continue and present a generous counterproposal of her kingdom to Eruz. She confidently promised Eruz a duchy and lands almost like ruling a small country. Laughing, Irius said he would accept Irius's offer before hearing Minon's last convincing proposal too. Smiling behind her glasses, Gabriel showed the proposal that gives control over the sea, land, and vast territories. Gabriel boldly promised to give up territories if Yuri and Arias allowed Shield to join the minutes. Everyone raised their hands, enthusiastically voting to send Irius to extract it without asking him. Meanwhile, panic engulfed Helena's palace. Everyone demanded answers about the destruction of the Eternal Barrier. The Knight Captain reported to the enraged king that he had arrived and was ready for orders. Begging for permission, the captain asked to lead the search for the lost shield throughout the kingdom. The king praised the captain's courage and relied only on him, only he was to lead everyone through this crisis. Sighing deeply, the king admitted that he really wanted to rest and entrusted everything to his knight. The enraged captain struck his fist and demanded an explanation of why Elaine approved such a reckless, doomed plan. Elaine snorted coldly, accusing him of shared guilt and reminding him of the promised rewards. She shouted defiantly, refusing to take the blame, and he responded by shouting, exposing their secret deal for power. The captain swore they must hide everything, while Elaine wept. She deeply loved her prince. Standing on the palace balcony, he ordered to bribe the witnesses so that the rumors about the broken engagement would be silenced. Somewhere else, another agent planned to torture Irias, if necessary, to restore the power of the lost barrier. Elaine quietly left, leaving the captain alone to prepare the next stage of their plan. Resolutely grabbing the sword, he swore finally the time had come for this hidden assassin to act. They gathered around the table and laughed, while Shield worried, not knowing which path to choose in his uncertain future. Shield crossed his arms over his chest and confidently declared that he would stay behind, rejecting proposals that demanded too serious commitments. She reminded him that nations would chase after him, desperately striving to forever capture the incomparable defensive power of the barrier. Rolling the contract across the table, she offered to give him power over the eastern lands of Maria. She solemnly asked him to rule Murai alone, fully trusting him to protect her people. He realized that by agreeing to autonomy, he would be almost like a sovereign with a burden he never thought to take upon his shoulders. The council asked to place barriers near the dragon forest, begging that its forces protect all kingdoms from destruction. The giant dragon roared, reminding everyone that no fortress is safe without magic that creates protective shields. They enthusiastically praised Myri's resources, impatient to start, and the hall filled with laughter and cautious agreements. Glasses clinked, sealing alliances, and finally announcing the birth of his own independent domain. As agreed, Shield set off north to Irias and prepared a protective barrier spell. He rushed forward, and the people watching froze in admiration as he disappeared behind the gate. Shield effortlessly completed the barrier, pretending it took longer to seem more attentive. He asked for some time to wander calmly, and he was allowed to pass through each post without hindrance. He was handed a ruby bracelet, proof of his titled, jokingly offered marriage amid smiles. The women insisted that he remain their man, completely ignoring his embarrassment and uncertain look. Determined to break free from the bustle, Shield grabbed her by the hand and instantly pulled everyone away from the negotiations. He carefully counted their money and horrified noticed that 10,000 gold coins disappeared faster than he expected. Although they planned a 10-day journey, the money ran out after only 3 exhausting days. Irritation burst out of her. She scolded him for overeating and advised him to get to work immediately to survive. She said she would just eat him if he got hungry, smiling without a trace of shame. Shield decided to earn money secretly and firmly promised himself never to get involved in illegal affairs and not to show who he really was. In the Adventurers Guild Hall, voices exploded loudly celebrating the quest and the promise of shared glory. He whispered nervously, and she directly remarked that everyone looked too weak for truly dangerous missions. The guild receptionist warmly welcomed them, ready to select a quest that suited their hidden strength. He declared that he would register as an adventurer, and the receptionist at first looked at him skeptically. Having neither recommendations nor experience, he was immediately sent to the lowest level. He protested that small quests paid little, but the receptionist strictly insisted. His rank determined which tasks he would get. In despair, he complained that he had to feed a companion who devoured portions meant for an entire group of travelers. Suddenly, a stranger appeared before them and offered help, and the guild people froze in surprise and curiosity. Isses appeared confidently and introduced himself, and whispers spread in the guild hall. Everyone recognized him by reputation. Shield insisted that he could handle more difficult tasks on his own, but Isis calmly vouched for his skills. Smiling, Isis offered to lead him into the demanding world of high-level adventure missions. Everyone was whispering about the famous Rank B heroes who so steadfastly supported the confused newcomer. They agreed to split the rewards equally, but Isis teased him for thinking that more allies would join. They decided to undertake the Jinga Turtle quest, not realizing how stubborn this creature could be. Isida warned them, her shell can withstand everything, while they cautiously descended into the rocky dungeon. He explained that the turtle always hides, which annoys Shield, while Faye silently and indifferently snacked nearby. Shield panicked. Barrier magic was useless because protective spells are powerless if the target simply disappears. With trembling confidence, he insisted that success was certain, although Issa doubted whether there were any monsters here at all. Isis asked who would guard the front or the rear, and with simple questions about strategy, she confused them. He sighed heavily, reminding Shield that combat roles matter, and begged him to just stay safe today. Resolutely, Isis ordered Shield to hide behind him and under no circumstances make reckless moves. Suddenly, a huge creature burst out. Its roar was so powerful that the cave walls trembled. Ignoring the warning, Isis fearlessly rushed forward, eager to prove his strength against the fury of the rabid monster. Isis bravely charged forward, decisively declaring that with one decisive strike he would end the fight. His sword clanged in vain. The turtle disappeared underground, leaving everyone irritated by its tricks. He tried to chop again and again, but the monster's shell completely withstood every attack. Shield threw him a spare blade, fearing that the next strike would shatter his weapon to pieces. Desperately, Issa's infused magic into the sword, invoking a barrier enhancement to finally pierce the shell. Shield warned everyone to stay away, pondering how to carefully strengthen Isis's sword with his barrier magic. Isis felt his strikes growing stronger, confidence soaring as he prepared the final finishing blow. His blade thunderously descended again and again, but the monstrous shell yielded to no strike. The cave shook as the giant creature suddenly curled its body into a ball, preparing for an unstoppable rolling attack. With the terrifying speed of turtles, the Jingas spun forward, threatening to crush everything in their path. Shield panicked. He realized he had to quickly create a barrier around Isis before disaster struck. Isis gritted his teeth and channeled power into his sword as the monster lunged with incredible fury. The blow threw him back with insane force, and Shield shouted his name in the echoing cave. Though shaken, Isis stood up, sighing with relief as she saw the creature finally emerge from its shell. Breathing heavily, he stated that the monster's rank was incorrectly identified. It It was called a Noah rank, but in reality it was rank S. Shield saw Isis cornered and understood that his ally had exhausted all options to stay on her feet. He screamed in despair, begging Isis to retreat as the creature lunged faster than before. Isis cursed the shield that rolled closer. She was terrified that the monster attacking them could instantly crush them both. Shield raised his hand and prayed that his magical barrier would activate before the jaws clamped down. Blood splattered on the stones, and Isis, stunned by the deep sudden wound, looked down. Faye silently watched from the shadows, her face calm while chaos raged in the cave. Dust settled around Isis's motionless body, and Shield feared that now he was truly dead. A huge black shell fell with a rumble, dark liquid flowed everywhere from it and stunned everyone who saw it. He froze, looking at the severed head of the turtle Jinga, and realized their barrier immediately beheaded the monster. Calmly, he admitted that he raised the barrier, while others panicked over the sudden and brutal defeat of that creature. Shield descended onto the debris and it became clear. His barrier stopped the insurmountable onslaught, and all this without any complex spells. Without hesitation, she broke the shell and, despite the worried cries of everyone, prepared to eat it. She confidently chewed the shell, and everyone froze. Its structure cracked loudly between her teeth. Suddenly, she pressed the shell to her back, preparing to show its hidden magical power. Pouring energy, she demonstrated that the shell could instantly harden, turning into protective spiked armor. Shield suggested hiding this. It looked absurd, and she agreed to show it only if necessary. While she calmly watched, one man, unable to withstand the stress, fainted because he realized an even greater chaos was inevitably approaching them. They prepared to set off. Relieved that the legendary shield was now with them, they felt the road would become safer. In his soul, he modestly declined the praise, and they invited him to join their next adventure in Murai. He politely declined, explaining that he still remains the best adventurer in the city, and promised that they would meet again someday. Grateful, she left him a small magical talisman, and their group finally entered the bustling town. Arriving exhausted, they argued about what to spend money on, glad to have survived, but already worried about future expenses. They entered the almost empty town and were embarrassed when desperate residents mistook him for a holy priest. Disappointed, the villagers bowed their heads, lamenting the priest's delay. Helplessness and irritation pressed harder and harder. Reacting quickly, he offered help, although he was not a priest, hoping to earn some food. They learned that the whole town was sick from a curse and awaited divine help that was supposed to heal it. Despair rose when he admitted that barriers were useless against curses, and hunger was already becoming a threat. She agreed to help and, laughing, joked that she would eat him if everything went completely wrong. They left behind the worried villagers, unsure if the curse really existed and with no clear goal ahead. Face caught an old familiar sent nearby and paid no attention to any curse, too weak to harm a person. They walked the path deeper into the forest, troubled by the strong magical energy enveloping their way. Before them, the water of the lake turned ominously red, confirming that something dangerous was definitely happening here. They were startled by a confident voice that addressed them, but no one yet understood who was speaking. From the water burst a demon named Azazel, who was once her formidable ally in ancient wars. Ignoring protests, she calmly raised her hand, preparing to break the mighty seal that restrained him. She explained that the leakage of Azazel's magic had cursed the city, and decided to completely break his chains right now. Azazel stood revived and calm, looking at them while energy exploded around his body across the clearing. Azazel solemnly knelt before Faye and, with respect in his voice, declared that 300 years had passed since their meeting. He sincerely apologized for being sealed by humans and submitted to any punishment that Faye might now desire. Suddenly, Azazel glared angrily and demanded explanations. Why was there a human standing next to Faye? They were convinced. The war must start again. Azazel declared that he would kill that human to prove his loyalty. Raising his hand, Azazel announced that he had become even stronger and was determined to show his new power. Azazel unleashed corruption magic. Dark energy spread around, and the human cautiously watched, waiting for any attack. He proudly explained that this magic was created when he was sealed, and was confident that no hero could resist it. Faye admitted that it was impressive magic and warned, now no human could resist it. Azazel swore to destroy any hero and offered Faye to rule humanity together again. Faye firmly refused, warning that there are stronger threats, and declared that she would not start another senseless war again. Azazel asked where such a powerful enemy could exist, firmly deciding to immediately show his stunning power. He pointed at the stunned man and firmly stated, "This person is exactly the strongest being they need." Faye suggested, if Azazel kills him, she could ignite a war against humanity again. Azazel agreed, calmly saying that he only needed to kill the man, ignoring the man's protests. Dark energy swirled around Azazel as he prepared to unleash corruption magic directly at the opponent. A huge explosion of dark energy thundered, shaking the forest. Its corrupting power was unleashed. Faye calmly watched and asked if Azazel's magic really corrupts everything it touches, without any exception. They held their breath watching as the explosion subsided, trying to see if the man survived the attack. Azazel stood confidently and said that the fight was a trifle, but Faye sharply warned him not to underestimate the opponent. The man crawled out from under the rubble, stunned but alive, and realized how terrible Azazel's power was. Azazel hesitated for a moment, wondering if his power was incomplete, but instead decided to attack the man directly. He lifted a giant mass of earth above his head, preparing without hesitation to crush the man. The earth exploded from the impact, dust and debris filled the air, and Azazel calmly watched. Confident in victory, Azazel began planning the invasion, while others felt the danger growing. Despite the fatigue, he stood ready, covered himself, and muttered that he needed a little time to catch his breath. The man looked around in panic, shocked that Azazel had disappeared without leaving a trace. He admitted that he had never before encountered corruption magic and felt completely powerless against it. From the shadows, Azazel's voice confidently cut through. He had already taken position to strike directly. Azazel appeared behind him, grabbed his shoulder, smiled coldly, and whispered the last mocking goodbye. Seeing Azazel's face reflected in his eye, he realized with horror that he was about to die. And then Shield grabbed the enemy's hand and, filled with wild determination, reflected the barrier magic back. The blonde warrior sharply swung her blade, striving with all her might to break the unbreakable defense. Confused, he retreated, examining the strange barrier and recalling old warnings about its power. The elf spoke of the terrible power of his barrier. It repels any magic so easily, as if exerting no effort at all. With a quiet smile, Shield insisted that no research could overcome the impenetrable barrier protecting his body. The light-haired warrior silently charged the attack, but the mage unleashed false magic to confuse the assault. A mighty force tore the ground, debris flew in all directions as the deceptive spell exploded with fury. Blood flowed down the warrior's hand, while the mage calmly advised him to stop fighting. When the mage learned that the wound would heal in a week, he sincerely and instantly froze in astonishment. The elf doubted humanity's strength, but then admitted he understands Lord Faye's plan behind this strange conflict. The elf realized the real battle will begin only 10 years after the mage finally dies. She asked Azazel to retreat, and the mage was horrified, fearing that humanity might become extinct after his death. Azazel refused to leave immediately. He said there were still unfinished matters to resolve before disappearing into the shadows. Dark energy tore the earth in half, causing everyone to recoil while the shadows quickly gathered. Bidding farewell for the last time, Azazel vanished into the darkness, leaving the group in silence and anxiety. The mage admired their power, but was frightened by the thought of turning such terrifying creatures into reliable allies. The elf explained that true might lies in overwhelming power, not just in unparalleled combat skills. Azazel confirmed, they ruled by fear, forcing everyone, both enemies and comrades, to obey without hesitation. He realized that the total count included all subscribers, even merchants, and this revelation shocked him. She gently calmed him. Loyal allies will not betray, and reminded him that he himself believed in protective barriers. The mage hurriedly rushed forward to report success, and his companions barely kept up with him. Through the trees they finally noticed Mary, a majestic city shining under a clear, cloudless sky. He complained about constant suspicion, but relief grew stronger as the city walls drew nearer. Exhausted and hungry, she demanded to go faster, and he, smiling proudly, praised them for surviving despite numerous dangers. Standing nearby, they looked admiringly at the magnificent structures of Myri and realized that their journey had truly reached a turning point. He stepped forward, trembling as he asked himself, does the great mansion and the awards really belong only to him? Together they approached the massive main entrance of the mansion, and at that moment it became clear. This impressive house was now their home. He extended a bead token proof that they could enter without unnecessary questions from the guards. Introducing himself confidently as Shield Rayleigh, he immediately began trying to look dignified before his companion. The guards solemnly bowed, greeted the new lord, and finally invited them to enter. They joked about the golden carriage, but when the gates slowly creaked open, curiosity flared. Approaching the estate courtyard, they saw masked servants quietly preparing, and this together immediately made a creepy first impression. The two of them entered the yard, silently followed by servants, each watching them closely with hidden expressions on their faces. A masked servant respectfully led them inside, and quietly explained that an important person was patiently waiting to receive them. Walking through the luxurious hall, they felt excitement and uncertainty about what would happen next. They were told to wait. They felt unwelcome, as the servants cast cold glances without any warmth. The mage felt hostility, and she said with cold certainty that refusal would simply mean destruction. Interested, he wondered whom they were waiting for, but a sudden noise sharply interrupted this tense moment. A stern old man suddenly appeared in the hall, accompanied by guards. Each of his steps sounded like a command, and filled the space with authority. He greeted them formally as representatives of hell in this country, his voice calm, and his eyes carefully measured them. Van Gogh calmly introduced himself and said he had been managing the estate since the reign of the previous lord. He gently hinted at the humble origin of the new lord, implying that life could go on unchanged to everyone's benefit. The wizard realized that Van Gogh intended to make him a puppet ruler, leaving no real power. He forced himself to put on a tense smile and silently understood. This struggle for control could last a long time. Suddenly, a blonde warrior appeared again, bursting in boldly with her loyal comrades, ready to challenge all established orders. Van Gogh shrank in shock, unable to comprehend the sudden challenge that exploded before his astonished eyes. Faye loudly announced that he had freed the sealed allies and asked permission to serve Shield Rayleighs for 10 years. Having received permission, the fighter rushed forward, while Van Gogh loudly shouted about their audacity. Dark force exploded in the hall, shattering the walls into fragments, and the horned warrior strode forward without any hesitation. The black mass fell to the floor with a rumble and spread a sinister aura no one dared to approach carelessly. Azazel's eyes narrowed coldly without any hesitation. He made it clear that nothing would stand in his way anymore. Darkness poured into the hall, and the frightened guards retreated. They could not withstand his power. Beluga calmly stepped forward and drew her sword as soon as Azazel ordered her to cleanse the uninvited guests. He approved her mission, gave her the right to destroy anyone she deemed unworthy of their presence. The trembling man begged for mercy while Beluga advanced, face expressionless, sword raised high. Beluga coldly warned him, unfinished business will only bring more problems in the future. With dead eyes, he watched her blade descend, realizing there was no escape from her verdict. Blood splattered across the hall, and Van Gogh maintained a grim expression, though he witnessed the execution. Enraged, Van Gogh threatened revenge, but the calm, unwavering order from Azazel's stop silenced him. Azazel unleashed a wave of destructive energy, instantly sweeping away the last remnants of defiance. Beluga confidently replied that all other threats in the estate had already been permanently removed. She ordered to let in the survivors. Their relieved voices spoke of loyalty as they cautiously entered together. Beluga announced that only these 5 turned out to be harmless. This stunned the mage, who had expected many more survivors. He carefully scrutinized that small group, precisely determining who among the former staff remained loyal. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the leaning girl. He did not understand why she was among the few spared. He promised to double the salaries if they stayed, trying to restore order after the bloody purge. In a serious tone, he demanded silence and forbade anyone from talking about what had happened that day. The survivors gratefully shouted and swore loyalty, and silenced the relief after such chaos almost overwhelmed them. But the fierce gaze of one girl threw him off balance. Her presence was too intense to dismiss, yet completely harmless. She stepped forward boldly, meeting his gaze with a silent challenge while everyone else watched anxiously. He stared long into her piercing eyes and felt, behind her silence hid a dangerous secret. The council anxiously gathered around the frightened girl. No one understood why Van Gogh's soldiers had dragged her here. Shield noticed her trembling hands tied with a rope, and realized that she silently endured hidden torments. He learned that she was the daughter of a former lord, whom Vanger secretly imprisoned to seize power. She fell wounded and in despair. Shield cautiously approached and offered help despite her pleas to flee. Overwhelmed with shame, she struck her scars and screamed so that no one would see her pain. She shouted that she would rather die than endure more humiliations and endless prison torments. Tears rolled down, and the people around watched and felt. This cruel world had finally broken her spirit. Shield demanded medicine immediately. He firmly decided to care for her without any hesitation or judgment. The girl doubted his kindness, was not sure if he kept others in slavery, and he calmly offered peace. Trembling, she finally took his hand and quietly whispered apologies for all her suspicions. Lumi bowed deeply, finally introduced herself, and sincerely thanked him for rescuing her from captivity. Although she trusted Shield, the nobility still did not believe. The memory of how Vanga betrayed her family's honor haunted her. A voice burst from her. She vowed to protect Maria, her father's legacy, from the demon onslaught. With fierce determination, she declared that she would protect everyone she loves, despite any threat. From outside, Shield activated the barrier, and the villagers felt relieved that they were finally safe under his magic. The shield barrier enveloped the bird's nest, and the old man remarked with surprise at this strange protective magic. The snake lunged at the nest, but the barrier easily repelled it. The old man wondered why Shield mastered protective rather than offensive spells and what his true purpose was. Shield firmly replied that these barriers exist to protect something too precious that he would never risk losing. Lummies realized that he too was fighting for something important and quietly asked himself what that reason could be. Shield offered to teach her magic and challenged Lummies to become stronger and reclaim the city on her own. He clearly said that he only taught barrier magic, and this stunned everyone who hoped for more powerful offensive techniques. Watching her leave, he quietly hoped that barrier spells would one day truly be able to protect her. Returning to the village, Shield casually asked what to do next, although tension still prevailed around. Azazel suggested using the legacy of the old lord to become stronger against the looming threats. Looking at the destroyed dams, Shield realized constant floods were slowing the city's growth and undermining its development. He sighed heavily. Recovery after the disaster was consuming resources, and repairing the flood dams required enormous financial sacrifices. The peasants gathered, hearts pounding. Does Shield care about their survival, or simply ignore their plight? One woman stepped forward, clutching her blouse, her heart tightening with fear of what awaited them. The elder sharply demanded an answer. Why had the Lord allied with demons and ignored their suffering? Shield persistently asked everyone to step back, apologizing for sounding harsh, because tension was rising among the peasants. His allies assured, they came peacefully only to control the flood, not to provoke violence. Corrupt officials panicked, fearing the project would expose how they embezzled tax money, and began shouting accusations to sow doubt. When someone lunged at her in rage, she struck lightning fast, defending herself without hesitation. She fearlessly stepped toward the crowd and challenged anyone who dared oppose their mission. Step forward. Shield admitted that her magic was terrible, and vowed never to stand against enemies of such overwhelming power. He warned against ruling by fear and firmly declared, "Let trust guide us, not terror." Raising his hands, he was about not just to tell about the power of the barrier but also to show it. A huge protective dome appeared, and everyone froze in amazement. He calmly held that powerful protective magic. He said it would last 3 years, and the peasants whispered, not believing in its true strength. Warmly laughing, Shield invited everyone to try the barrier themselves to be convinced of its strength. He loudly announced a grand tournament and challenged all mages. Whoever breaks through his barrier will take the prize. The winner would receive enchanted equipment and a military rank enough to motivate every contender. Skeptics muttered and waved it off. They said it was just barrier magic. Its simplicity did not impress them. Shield corrected them, explaining that this was the very legendary barrier that once protected all of Helena. The announcer sharply silenced everyone and ordered, 10 minutes of free attack, let's test your strength. At a loud signal, the warriors rushed forward, raising their weapons, determined to break the unshakable barrier. The spectators gasped as famous adventurers poured out all their power, and the air filled with explosive force. Confident opponents said it was extremely simple, and Shield calmly waited, watching with interest how it would end. Despite the barrage of blows, the barrier remained flawless. There was not a single scratch on its surface. The spectators wildly chanted, urging the participants not to stop and to attack with all their might during the final countdown. The warrior struck the barrier with his fist with all his strength, sweat streaming down his face, while the seconds mercilessly ticked away. Time ran out, the exhausted opponents collapsed, admitting defeat. No crack appeared on the shield barrier. Everyone froze in admiration. They realized that nothing had changed. The barrier remained perfect and completely undamaged. Shield confidently stepped forward, ready to deliver the verdict and announce the official tournament result. She thoughtfully touched the barrier, carefully examining every scratch and mark to determine the fair competition result. He proudly announced the results, naming the attack that left the strongest impression. The champion was announced number 24. He raised his fist high and the crowd erupted in applause. A comrade asked why those seemingly harmless competitions existed, and Shield thoughtfully explained their hidden benefit. Smiling warmly, he reminded her that comrades must always support and believe in each other. She hesitated, then quietly admitted that she had previously underestimated him, but now saw his true value. Confused, he wiped his face and wondered what impression he made on everyone. Azazel ran up quickly and shouted that guests who wanted to meet had unexpectedly arrived at the mansion. Shield became alert. He felt that Gabriel was somehow involved, and tensed in anticipation of new unexpected troubles. He sighed heavily. He was already annoyed by the fuss with another visitor. Shield confidently returned to his hall servants, and a silent demon girl greeted him. The servants whispered about the visitor. Rumors called him the strongest Major Olivier while he walked down the dim corridor. She clenched her thoughts into a fist, determined to keep calm before opening the heavy wooden door. A sudden voice confirmed the suspicion. A cup fell, its chime echoed across the polished marble floor. Proudly appearing, Lord Hamig revealed himself, smiling at their surprise and the growing hidden horror. Shield froze in astonishment. He was expecting Olivier, but instead before him was only Hamag's mocking gaze and derisive smile. Hamag stood on the other side of the room and admitted he was not sure, while tension swirled among the three stunned. Hamag sneered mockingly, showing his importance, and said he had come only for their strongest barrier mage. The young lord sneered and coldly reminded Hamag he was expelled and now suddenly they want to bring him back. He understood that the king had never cancelled this exile, but the barrier was more important to him than pride. Calmly raising his hand, he warned Hamag that he would not return without a real reason. Gamma rushed forward, mocking the barrier magic, determined to capture him alive despite any desperate resistance. Confidently crouching, Hamag prepared a spell and declared that no one had ever seen this power break free before. Suddenly a blinding flash exploded, and he covered his eyes. His vision almost completely vanished. Confused, he realized that his barrier could not withstand the light, and illusions flickered around while mocking voices sounded. He suddenly understood. What seemed like simple light was not an attack, but the barrier magic hiding much deeper possibilities. Resolutely, he activated barrier magic detection and released a mesh energy over the shattered, flickering floor of the chamber. Immediately seeing Hammock, he shouted a challenge and prepared to strike, breaking through the blinding illusions and treacherous shadows. A wave of force exploded, throwing Gamma back through the stone walls and columns crumbled around. The dust slowly dispersed. He wiped his eyes and felt relieved that his vision had finally returned. He studied Gamma, embedded in rubble, and anxiously thought that even the barrier magic might soon not withstand against stronger enemies. A horned demon named Azazel appeared, calmly carrying bottles and food, and everyone was surprised by his timeliness. Azazel quickly assessed the scene and suggested removing Gamaga, while Faye instantly called for reinforcements. Azazel calmed them, explaining that the selection of the strongest army was about to end. The power was already ready to be gathered. Hundreds gathered outside the fortress walls, ready to prove they were worthy to join the upcoming battles. The fierce elf declared victory, proudly raising her staff above the broken training field. Watching from afar, he asked who she was. He was intrigued by her stunningly confident aura. She was Capre, the strongest dual-sword swordswoman, who ruled the night qualifying finals without any hesitation. The last contender nervously stepped forward, composed himself, and introduced himself under her sharp, scrutinizing gaze. With a trembling voice, he named his name Oliver, and the crowd silently awaited their final duel. The confident elven warrior declared victory after crushing her opponent, standing proudly in the middle of the training field. Two observers watched her from afar, feeling her incredible power and knowing that she was feared as a formidable warrior. She mocked the crowd, called the brave to fight against her, and whispers about her power spread everywhere. The hesitant knight took a reluctant step forward. Duty pushed him, his body tense, and he faced inevitable defeat. The knight, introducing himself as Oliver, trembled before the famous champion, but still showed nervous determination. Caprese laughed loudly, teasing Oliver. He trembled so much he barely lifted his sword. Despite fear, Oliver, thanks to many battles, proved himself and reached this final duel. Caprese finally noticed Shield nearby. He smiled, as if mocking his sudden interest in the unfolding fight. Oliver begged for mercy, and Caprese asked permission to kill, and Shield indifferently allowed them to continue. Their blades rose in tense silence, and at the signal the final fight began instantly. Caprese rushed forward with a playful threat, warning Oliver not to die before the end of the match. Shield looked at the alarm signal and realized with horror that her insane speed could deprive them of the promised new ally. Instantly, Shield cast a barrier and intercepted Caprese's strike before it hit Oliver's head. Caprese blinked, confused. Her blade passed through the air and the target suddenly disappeared completely. Stepping back a step, she carefully assessed Oliver's position, hesitating. Was it a lucky chance or hidden skill? Caprese mockingly laughed at Oliver's retreat and, swiftly slicing through, drove him into a corner against the merciless stone wall. Shield calmly raised a hand and said he would raise the barrier again to protect Oliver. Oliver calmly closed his eyes, and Caprice lunged forward, thinking he was already surrendering to inevitable defeat. But when the air thickened, Caprice realized everything had changed. Oliver's presence had become impossibly heavy. Suddenly he stepped forward. Each of his steps was an unshakable force, and the spectators froze in complete silence. Around Caprese, an impact wave exploded as she again tried to precisely catch Oliver's impossible movement. But irritated, she shouted for him to stop hiding and demanded an honest face-to-face fight here and now. Shield was stunned to realize that Caprizer himself now needed protection from Oliver's sudden, overwhelming presence. Feigning calm, Caprese faltered in excuses, and her confidence melted under Oliver's quiet, relentless advance. With one move, Oliver's strength threw her back, and she fell heavily before the stunned audience. Shield urgently shouted Caprese's name, realizing she had been thrown back much harder than anyone could have expected. Caprese lay stunned on the ruins, eyes wide open, body unresponsive. She could neither move nor speak. Shield stepped closer, staring at Oliver, unable to comprehend how he defeated her with a single blow. Oliver's face did not change. His eyes looked straight ahead, cold and unwavering, radiating focus and strength. Caprese buckled from the sudden strike. Shield rushed to her, frightened by her condition. She grimaced in pain but stood up again. The armored warrior silently watched her struggle. Caprese resolutely wiped her lip and declared she would fight with all her might. Ignoring all warnings, she charged at the man. He stood like a rock, completely unmoved by her threat. With a single wave of his hand, power surged. The air shifted. He became serious. Caprese rushed without hesitation, putting all her strength into one desperate and reckless attack. Though she exerted all her effort, the man calmly blocked her blade, smirking and not flinching under the pressure. Her eyes flared with rage and despair. Her strength could not break his defense. She immediately noticed a change. He was now stronger, more focused, as if a completely different person. Her strike was stopped right in the air. A powerful thrust through her back. Shockwaves spread across the ground. Caprese's blows rained down relentlessly, but she felt as if she was fighting someone completely different, stronger. In the heat of the battle, she changed tactics and launched an attack at speed, but the opponent remained calm and unshaken. In the close duel, he easily counterattacked and directed his blade at her exposed side. His next kick hit directly, throwing her backward. She didn't have time to react to block it. Blood splattered, her consciousness dimmed. The difference in strength was so great it was painfully felt. Standing over her, Oliver raised his sword and wondered, should this fight really end here? Holding his breath, he raised the sword high, preparing for the final decisive strike. Caprese, bleeding but defiant, accepted the outcome. Her smirk hid pain and pride behind the words. Before the blade could descend, their elder intervened and interrupted the duel with a sharp command shout. He praised both warriors, and then like thunder out of a clear sky unexpectedly promoted Oliver, announcing him the new captain of the Knights. Oliver hesitated, but still shook hands. The appointment as captain still didn't sink in. Everyone acknowledged Oliver's power. Caprese, recovering, praised his gift and called it the magic of mastery. It was explained that Oliver's power allows spirits to enter his body, but only when he is calm and open. Oliver's gift could channel the power of thousands of sword masters. Because of this, he was feared and reluctantly admired. Caprese admitted defeat but extended a helping hand. Her experience would now assist Oliver in his new role. Against the backdrop of military reports, Azazel brought tax documents, and this triggered a serious administrative audit by the leadership. The absurd taxes angered the Lord. They charged a fee for birth even if the body weight was known. He jokingly spared the tax on excess weight, but demanded that all other foolish policies be thrown out. They agreed to travel together across the country to see the laws with their own eyes and adjust them to the real needs of the people. When he was inspecting the town, children recognized him and happily greeted him, calling him the cool grandpa. The peasants loudly praised their new lord, grateful for his reforms and the kindness he showed to the people. The hall erupted in applause when they announced that taxes were lifted. This boosted people's morale and significantly increased food production. The lord was worried that his rule seemed harsh, but they calmed him with laughter and gratitude. Suddenly, a commotion erupted. Someone shouted that the man had unfairly wronged the little demon. The accused insisted on his innocence and shifted the blame onto the child, saying that he had entered the human village and caused trouble. When the tension rose, the Lord demanded justice and insisted that everyone listen to the side of the human boy. The little demon cried desperately, saying that he was being bullied just because he was not human. Hearing another sharp remark, the Lord sighed. He realized that the prejudice was deeper than it seemed. He created a barrier in front of the boy, stopped his lunge, and prevented the violence from escalating further. When asked why demons were so different, the child nervously answered, pointing only to their ears. The Lord gently pointed to the boy's freckles, showing that everyone looks different on the outside. He explained that judging people by their appearance causes pain. The boy began to understand what compassion is. The ruler called demons and humans his family, and called for unity. The boy nodded in agreement. The children quickly apologized and made peace, laughing together as if nothing had happened. The Lord's words echoed for a long time. Even adults quietly reflected on his vision of a shared family. With a resolute voice, he summoned the barrier that spread like a dome over the land. The demon froze in delight and took it as a miracle, although everything looked as if it happened without any effort. He enthusiastically explained the plan. The joining of the barriers would complete the creation of a strong foundation for a powerful, united nation. From the sky, the connected barriers silently rose and formed strong protective domes over key places, preparing to meet a future of prosperity. Surveying the protected lands, they silently admired the beauty of their shared home. They walked together, calm and quiet. None wanted war. They were simply grateful for the current peace. After a month of hard work, a gentle hand quietly extended thanks and words of gratitude. With curiosity, the ruler asked whether the demon's life had improved after the seal was broken. At first uncertainly, the change acknowledged by the demon was difficult, but it glimmered with hope. He rarely smiled and agreed, now it is much better than 3 centuries ago. The master teased the demon about the smile, and the embarrassed denial only confirmed it. He joyfully announced a celebration and cheerfully left, while the demon quietly watched with a softened expression. In another place, a desperate man was asking for help, calling someone's name in despair. He bent down before the wounded girl. His pride vanished. Instead came a sharp, desperate need. Calling her his last hope, he begged for help because Jim Egg had disappeared. The girl accepted the mission on her own terms, burning with the desire to learn the powerful barrier magic shield. She was walking down the corridor when suddenly another woman noticed her and instantly recognized her. The woman angrily questioned this decision, doubting the girl's abilities and calling her unreliable. She demanded control, offering her own plan with knights, and sharply criticized the captain's leadership. The girl with a sly smile quietly confessed that she had a secret plan that none of them expected. She smiled confidently, hinting at a hidden weapon so powerful it could plunge the shield into chaos. Shield calmly walked through the bustling market. Merchants flourished under the protection of the mighty barrier he created. Suddenly, a desperate merchant rushed forward, shouting "Shield," his voice echoing through the street. Shield Shield Shield. The Shield stopped Beluga from intervening, deciding first to listen to the merchant and find out why he suddenly approached. The merchant introduced himself and said that he had crossed dangerous seas in search of a vacant position as head of the guild. Smiling, he threw off the cover and displayed a huge card of silver coins, clearly proving his sincerity and great ambitions. The merchant smiled slyly, certain that Shield was naive enough to agree to any bold bribe today. With a calm expression, Shield refused the offer and the merchant froze in shock, completely speechless. As he walked away, Shield thought that giving him power was only trouble, while the crowd watching praised him for justice and strength. Surrounded by admiration, she sighed he needed a disguise to secretly learn the true thoughts of the peasants. Beluga prepared a disguise, and Shield gladly examined the fake beard. It perfectly concealed his identity. Beluga calmly held the mask, and the embarrassed peasants only guessed where Shield had suddenly disappeared without any warning. Shield waved goodbye, insisted on going alone. He wanted to blend in with the people and hear sincere thoughts. Although disguised, whispers instantly spread. Everyone whispered, recognizing the Lord under that obvious costume. Trying to appear casual, Shield claimed he was just a traveler, but his awkward tone gave everything away. The peasants praised his rule, but secretly laughed. Everyone agreed that his act was simply the worst. Shield nervously laughed, listening to the peasants enthusiastically praising his barrier, and tried hard to maintain his awkward disguise. Beluga approached and scolded him for pretending, wondering if he was even trying to hide. Pretending to know nothing, Shield greeted Faye. She told about tiring talks with merchants and mocked his pathetic excuses. Faye took out a stained letter and explained that an elf, badly wounded on the road, entrusted it to her. Shield held the sealed parchment and realized it was an urgent message from the elven nation. Shield demanded to name the elf's whereabouts, and Faye explained that he was captured by a maid. She even named him Olivier. Understanding that Olivier kidnapped the envoy, she suspected his intentions and immediately prepared to return. Meanwhile, in the castle, Shield stood alone by the window, thoughtfully pondering the elf's troubling message. He carefully reviewed the reports, yet Olivier and Caprese still held the army with reliable precision and order. Shield thought about how the conflict with ELF would affect matters. He decided to check the castle's defenses once more before continuing the conversation. The little demon was sorting stones and did not understand why he was left alone. Suddenly, Shield appeared. The frightened boy panicked, nervously screamed, and the stones scattered everywhere. Gently smiling, Shield asked the boy's name, trying to calm his obvious fear. Diego admitted that he was too weak. Azazel had abandoned him, and he was ashamed of his shortcomings. Shield carefully examined the stones. Diego explained that he had reworked the magical stones, and this unusual technique fascinated him. Shield asked Diego what he was going to create, watching curiously as the boy nervously hesitated. Diego, with excitement in his voice, admitted that he hoped to change the barrier magic himself, although he had not yet asked for permission. Embarrassed, Diego apologized. Tears running down his face, he was convinced he had crossed the line by taking on such an ambitious project. Shield smiled and praised the barrier magic, and Diego enthusiastically shared his dream to share it with everyone. Holding the device in his hands, Diego revealed his idea, to modify the magical stones so that they would respond to magical power. Diego shone proudly, explaining that these stones could create a barrier that resists all magic anywhere it is needed. Intrigued, Shield inquired about Diego's request, and the boy impatiently asked for fragments of the power of his legendary barrier. Shield gladly responded and created the barrier. Diego rejoiced, amazed at how easily it appeared before him. Carefully, Diego prepared to attach his invention. Shield finally realized that Diego's hidden talents were impressive. Diego triumphantly showed the barrier, which now perfectly connected thanks to his modernized magical stone invention. Shield carefully examined the merged fragment of the barrier, curiosity shining in his eyes as he prepared to test its properties. Holding the device, Shield instantly felt its power. It perfectly transformed his barrier into a weapon, exceeding all expectations. He offered Diego money and enthusiastically promised to build even more barriers, eagerly discussing defense options. Diego cried with gratitude. Shield gently touched his head. He believed in the boy's determination and his brilliant ideas. As he was about to leave, Shield asked if Diego could also help prepare the buildings. Shield silently watched as Diego patched the walls. He said that Fuzzy Rampage had smashed everything and praised Diego's skill. Embarrassed, Diego insisted that it was too much praise. Finally, he felt confidence in himself. Suddenly, dark energy swirled behind him. Shield urgently shouted for Diego to turn around. From the darkness appeared a leg, and the Shields felt an overwhelming magical power they had never felt before. Before them appeared a girl with braids and a slight smile. Shield called her Akin but looked at her suspiciously. Akin descended lightly, confirming that she came because Karazales ordered her to appear here. She laughed at the fact that the old man begged her, and Shield suspected that she had her own hidden intentions. Akin loudly declared that she adored fighting. Without hesitation, she rushed forward and challenged S.H.I.E.L.D. to a serious duel. Bursting forward, she finally swore to break through S.H.I.E.L.D.'s barrier. Her power erupted like a storm. Akin landed disappointed. The barrier held again. S.H.I.E.L.D. sighed, pouting in frustration. Akin complained that even her strongest attacks only produced a simple barrier spell. She was irritated and confused. She announced that she had thought everything over carefully and for a long time. Dark magic swirled ominously over her raised hand. The black sphere exploded forward, Dago shouted, and S.H.I.E.L.D. protested, worried about recent repairs. Akin shouted that it was not her problem. Her chaotic magic exploded like roaring black flames. Calmly, S.H.I.E.L.D. raised both hands and summoned a barrier reflection to repel Akin's terrible attack. Akin swore and thoughtfully realized that the reflected strike could be dangerous even for her. She cheerfully waved goodbye to the magical shield and admitted that the spell really would have been deadly. With a wild smile, Akin prepared another spell and excitedly asked if it would be more interesting. But even before she managed to release it, her spell shattered against Dago's strong barrier. Dago stepped forward, unafraid, shielding himself with a shield, and bravely shouted that he would protect the Lord. Diego's legs trembled nervously. S.H.I.E.L.D. noticed this and called him by name, seeing hidden courage in the boy. S.H.I.E.L.D. thanked Dago for standing firm, but gently asked him to step back for safety. Dago insisted that it was S.H.I.E.L.D.'s barrier, proudly explaining how he reinforced it with stones. Akin released electricity. Dago's barrier completely reflected it, showing that no spell could break S.H.I.E.L.D.'s strongest magic. Calmly, S.H.I.E.L.D. watched as Akin changed tactics. She used slime, which cleverly bypassed magical detection. Akin teased Dago, laughing at the barrier's flaw. Dago faltered, and Akin proudly shouted that she had won. S.H.I.E.L.D. sighed deeply, realizing there was no other choice. Calmly, he drew Akin's attention. But he proposed a deal: be polite and stay. Akin agreed and happily pulled Dago to play. Watching them leave, S.H.I.E.L.D. forced himself to smile. He reminded them to fix all the damage. And high above, a lone figure silently watched the castle roof under the glow of the full moon. She lay peacefully resting, unaware that a shadowy figure silently slipped into her chamber. Dark energy swirled around her body, forcing her to open her eyes, and horror filled her mind. Suddenly, someone grabbed her and pressed her down. She wondered if the killer of Helena had returned again that night. Confusion surged as their hands awkwardly touched. Her voice trembled. She did not know what truly remained of their intentions. She recognized Meryl, who stood over her, eyes blazing, demanding explanations for everything. Morel, a brave and mysterious woman with cat ears, suddenly appeared in the hero's room without any warning. She leaned forward and with complete confidence proposed an unexpected alliance. Without hesitation, she stepped closer and bit him on the neck. The surprised hero screamed, and his cry echoed through the great hall. Hearing the scream, a worried ally burst through the door and called out to the hero in panic. She caught Meryl pressing him to the bed, and from this instantly arose an awkward misunderstanding. She immediately tried to defuse the situation. She became alert and doubted Meryl's presence. She felt uneasy that the demon had sided with humanity's protector. Meryl turned away with a sly smile while the blonde insisted that S.H.I.E.L.D. was a rare exception. Her eyes, however, remained sharp and watchful. She stepped closer, lifted the girl's chin, and praised her beauty. Tension hung in the air as Meryl reminded them how easily love can be stolen. The blonde calmly replied that if she desired her, she would not refuse. This boldness caught Meryl by surprise. Exhausted, the hero finally sat at the table to drink tea. Meryl confessed she had no important message, only the desire to see him again. Savoring the tea with a satisfied smile, Meryl basked in the morning calm, clearly enjoying the commotion she had caused. Meryl teasingly asked if she was really that charming. The hero waved it off, saying he simply liked how gracefully she moved. Secretly, he thought she looked cool but kept silent about it. Meryl sat confidently, and when they moved to official matters, decisively declared her noble origin. Suddenly, her tone became serious, and she asked to get straight to the point. Then she warned that Iris was in danger. This stunned the hero, and he instantly panicked. Meryl said it would not happen immediately, but the threat was real as long as the barrier held. Her rise to power across the continent seemed inevitable. On the table, an improvised map was laid out with teacups, and Meryl explained that while your eye and minute bordered Mary, Irius remained open in the north. The hero noticed that the regions had gained significantly from the recent deal with Minot, and another woman confirmed that the new ice-free port would mean great economic growth for Arias over the next decade. Meryl, with a knowing look, remarked that the beast could live longer, hinting that the queen's intentions were much more cunning. The hero asked what role was assigned to him, and Moral's answer transparently hinted. The queen wanted not diplomacy, but something personal and direct. When the hero began to understand the queen's intentions, he was seized by horror. In S.H.I.E.L.D.'s mind, a wild image emerged: the queen herself is carrying his child, and at that thought he turned to stone in terror. Meryl calmly explained the queen's true intention. She literally wanted his child, but not from herself. After all, she was over 60. She added more: if the child would be half-be, such a child would be given the throne. The hero was bewildered at the very thought that he would have to become the father of the future king. Panic seized him. What if the child turned out to be completely worthless? Merle did not hesitate. Of course, they would inherit the crown anyway. He looked down, confused. A child born without barrier magic could rule, but what was the point of that? This struck Shield. If he had a child, the queen surely expected him to protect Arius not out of duty, but because it would become the native land of his child. Merle confirmed. It was not just a brilliant political move. She promised to personally train their future child so that they would never be weak. She demanded without any hesitation that he sleep with her. Shield, completely unprepared emotionally, panicked, and Merle only teased him even more for wanting to be controlled. Coming even closer, Merle seductively whispered that if he liked to dominate, she would not mind taking everything into her own hands. At that moment, a new voice broke the tension. A woman named Elaine confidently entered with a stunning shield. The tension sharply increased. The blonde knight said that she had not yet killed Elaine only because there was no order. When they were left alone, Elaine froze for a moment, then confessed. She regretted not joining Shield when he was supposedly preparing a coup. Shield, angrily lunging at her, claimed that she was the one who planted those compromising documents, while Elaine insisted that she only found them when she was ordered to search his room. Elaine begged him, asserting that it was a conspiracy of the Knight Commander, and her words stirred those present. Suppressing tears, Elaine admitted the real reason she invited them to this private conversation. She wanted Shield to believe her and not fall for the deception around them. Helen insisted that behind all this stood the commander of the Knights and possibly the king himself. She reached out, begging Shield to trust her and return together to the kingdom to expose the truth, but Shield's attention was drawn to the glove on Elaine's hand, a small detail that seemed oddly out of place. He recalled how Elaine once said that she disliked gloves, always preferred to use her bare hands. Calmly, as if it were an everyday matter, Shield showed another clue. Akin had recently been there, and a person known for using their own magical nets and proudly leaving their marks had been there. He explained that she left magical scribbles everywhere. Elaine, with growing horror, realized that the same signs were on the walls. Shield exposed Elaine's deception. She completed spatial magic by embedding residual arrays of Akin under certain conditions. Elaine snapped. Her mask shattered, and she burst into wild laughter, mocking how Shield had grown, ridiculing his former weakness and marveling at how cunning he had become. When Elaine's allies moved to intervene, it became clear. Her plan was to remove obstacles and buy time. Others only watched as chaos unfolded. Meryl brushed off the threat and declared that no one in the room would even be able to scratch the shield, mockingly, with a confident smile. Shield, deeply moved, he realized that he had never had such sincere support from Helena, and for the first time felt what true camaraderie was. The loyal knights of Elaine, desperate to restore their plan, rushed forward. Their sole goal was to return Shield and force him to create the barrier again. But their assault was instantly stopped. The blonde knight parried effortlessly, leaving them bewildered. Her magic made their attacks futile, and they could not believe it. At that moment, a surge of earth magic paralyzed the knights, and they found themselves trapped within the walls. Elaine broke down in despair and blamed Shield for everything. She screamed that her life had fallen apart because of his barrier, while Meryl stood indifferent, unshaken. Morel coldly approached Elaine and reminded her that it was this very barrier that saved many more people. Elaine exploded with rage after Meryl's harsh words, but Meryl responded without hesitation, grabbing her, silencing her, and announcing that she was taking Elaine into custody. When the dust settled, Shield surveyed the ruins and calmly said that they would have to call Dago again to set everything right. His voice did not change, even though chaos reigned around. A few weeks later, Shield sincerely thanked Dago, but their peace did not last long. An urgent message arrived. Alan returned to Helena and confessed everything. It seems she admitted to conspiring with the commander of the Knights. As soon as another whisper reached his ear, Shield's face tightened with seriousness, because a new problem had appeared. Something far from over was beginning again. Shield gave orders urgently, decisively, and focused. He was preparing to meet the enemy. The time of reckoning had come. Lord Shield returns from the dungeon and gathers allies to discuss an urgent letter from the elves. Alarm rises in the room. Everyone prepares for bad news. The group recalls the history of the elves, a people who upheld peace and were once allies of humans during the Divine War. But everything changed. 50 years ago, a dark elf named Idia seized power and shook the balance of power in the Elven Kingdom. Now Idia rules with fear and leads a militarized faction, unlike the elves of the past. Although the elves did not ask for release, the letter threateningly warns of a spreading danger, and the group must quickly decide how to act before the conflict reaches their lands. The group understood that the elves risked their lives just to deliver the warning. He decisively declared that he would go to rescue the messenger who carried Olivier's letter. The location where the elf and Olivier were was just confirmed. Only a small team would be sent. Shield along with Beluga, while Caprice and Oliver would stand ready in reserve. She was ready to sacrifice herself if necessary, but Shield categorically refused. He insisted that he would protect everyone and at the same time prepared to retreat if the situation became hopeless. He bursts into the room, orders Olivier to free the elf, but instead sees the unexpected a naked girl sitting, and this shocks everyone. Without any warning, a deadly dark aura surged at them from the girl, and caught off guard. Shield immediately cast barrier magic to protect himself and allies from the approaching attack. The barrier held up at the last moment. Flames roared around them but could not break through the protective dome. The girl, angry and shameless, screamed out of embarrassment. To everyone's surprise, she was recognized as a dangerous figure, a self-proclaimed goddess who incited people with manipulation and charm. Her sudden surge of power caught Shield off guard, and he stepped back, trying to understand what had just happened. The confrontation intensified. Shield demanded answers, questioning her presence and intentions. Confused, she demanded to know for what purpose the girl had come. She denied acting on anyone's orders and tried to explain her motives. Her cheeks blazed, her voice rose. She confirmed she had come only to meet him. The tension eased a little. One of Shield's comrades noted that there were no evil intentions. The girl, still blushing, shouted for them to look away. She was completely overwhelmed with embarrassment. While she was changing clothes, she shouted at Shield, calling him a pervert. When things finally calmed down, the group turned their gaze to the elf in the bed. She had just been resurrected and needed rest. Suspicion did not leave Shield, and he asked once again for confirmation had she really not come to attack. She blushed even more, and Shield tried to lighten the mood. But just as the tension seemed to subside, he felt something. The ceiling exploded, debris rained down all around, and through the breach a hail of magical arrows burst forth, targeting the group inside. Shield in the air, lightning fast, analyzed the attack. Despite the stunning magical power, he calmly whispered a protective spell. The arrow changed course and scattered in all directions. His spell, a magical reflection, turned the enemy's power back onto the attackers themselves, covering the sky above the building with a deadly counterattack. Shock froze on Shield's face when he realized that one of the arrows was not deflected. The arrow was not magical. It vanished at the moment of impact and behaved unnaturally. The dark elf hovered in the air. For in his hands, Shield instantly recognized the killer from the Idea faction, an elite enemy sent directly to eliminate the targets. With a twisted smile, the killer activated the magic of corruption and instantly disappeared. Azazel screamed in despair, realizing he had been framed. Shield immediately gave the order to chase. Caprice and Oliver had to intercept the killer before he could report. In memory, the peasants once revered Olivia as a goddess, and she did not even suspect it. Olivier beamed with joy and said she was glad she came. Shield calmed her down, promising that from now on her life would be under his care and that he would give her a worthy role. Becoming serious, Chit focused on the next move. The magical residue from the previous battle allowed Caprice to track the enemy. Far from the conflict, the killer raced across the rooftops, hoping to escape unnoticed. Almost vanished, he heard a voice. He has been spotted. Startled, the killer realized that the pursuers were already nearby and had cut off his escape route. The smiling knight blocked his way and said that the game of hide and seek was over. The dark elf rushed to flee, and Olivier with her ally chased after him. She mocked, demanding to fight honorably, but he only continued to run. Cornered and irritated, they found themselves under another wave of attacks from the assassin. Charging his bow with energy, he threatened them with sacred arrows of light, his trump card. But Olivier did not flinch. She ridiculed the very idea that the dark elf could touch anything sacred, and dashed forward, delivering the first strike. Her blade hit precisely, and at the same time Oliver prepared his decisive blow and declared that he would not lose either. Suddenly something confused Oliver's course. The enemy launched a last desperate counterattack, and Olivia had to react instantly. A hail of arrows surrounded Olivier, light burst from all sides. The dark elf watched, convinced that his sacred attack had hit. Smoke thickly covered the place, and his target was nowhere to be seen. In a moment, Olivia jumped out from behind with. Crossing two swords in a decisive cut, she delivered a powerful strike. The enemy screamed in agony, overwhelmed with pain. Standing firm, she declared, "Case closed." Though wounded, the assassin was not finished, yet he rose with his last strength and struggled to aim one more final arrow. Suddenly, anxiety swept across her face. The arrow was not meant for her, and Oliver also noticed the danger. The escape maneuver was not aimed at her. A sudden explosion thundered as the enemy charged and unleashed a stunning force on Oliver, and flames raced down the street, leaving chaos behind. But from the very heart of the explosion, Oliver emerged unscathed and rushed forward with a confident smile. Finally, he struck back, thrusting his blade into the enemy's side, energy pulsating around him. This was the beginning of his counterattack. The enemy tried to recover, barely withstood the next assault, but his torn, exhausted appearance clearly showed that he was rapidly losing ground. They barely had time to react when Oliver appeared behind, and with one devastating blow instantly ended the fight. Without hesitation, Oliver delivered another devastating strike, hurling his target across the entire battlefield. The dark elf fell in blood and barely conscious. The victors loomed over him, looking down coldly and declaring the end of the battle. The The battle was over, the group returned to the city territory. They walked steadily, but the tension still hung in the air. In the grand hall, the fallen enemy stirred though bound and humiliated. He was still alive, and the observers noticed the immense power possessed by those like him. Leaning closer, the girl with a spark of amusement in her eyes examined him, and her curiosity turned sinister. She aloud pondered what would happen if she ate him. Despite his wounds, the dark elf did not give up. He spat contempt at his torturers. Lord Shield promised mercy in exchange for information, but the prisoner refused to cooperate. Meanwhile, Caprice proudly claimed victory and mocked Oliver for his slow start. Her admiration drowned out his half-hearted apology. Confident in her speed, Caprice stood on the field of bones and knew for sure no one could match her pace in battle. Lord Shield sincerely praised her performance, acknowledging that she had truly grown. Although he once underestimated her, her contribution was undeniable. Even Oliver admitted it. When she was asked about the battle, Caprice explained that the enemies focused exclusively on her, completely ignoring Oliver. Afterwards, the group cautiously analyzed how the enemy noticed Oliver. He did not emit any magic, yet still attracted attention. Therefore their opponents had rare magical sensitivity. Caprice received a new task to neutralize the hidden dark elves while restraining her own magical presence. Meanwhile, Oliver was told to continue training before joining. As soon as their conversation ended, the imprisoned dark elf broke free, and his energy flared fiercely. Devotion and despair drove him to self-sacrifice. He charged directly at Lord Shield, swearing to destroy him for Lady Idea. With a scream, he rushed forward with all his might, his body enveloped in magic, intending to end everything with one final blow. The room exploded into panic when Lord Shield was hit. His allies screamed in shock, fearing the worst after the desperate assassin's attack succeeded. But the next moment, Shield calmly raised his hand. A glowing weapon flickered in his palm, shimmering with magic, and it became clear. The attack had failed. Confused and enraged, the enemy demanded answers, while Shield, completely unbothered, simply smiled and looked at the damaged weapon in his hand. But it became clear the attack was not magical. Previously, reflections had misled, but this time something else was behind it all. When everyone finally put the puzzle together, they understood the truth. The enemy compressed pure magical energy into a physical strike. With a confident smile, Lord Shield sent the same attack back to its creator. Having understood its mechanism, he decided to end the clash on his own terms. The dark elf howled in pain as the reflected energy tore through him, his body shattered under the force he himself had unleashed first. After the battle, Shield immediately gave orders. Exiled was thrown into the reorganization of units, and messages flew to the nearest allies, notably to Gabriel. He spoke clearly. Demons were too rare and too valuable to waste. Having received the advisor's consent, Shield decided to act decisively. He deployed all his forces. The morning began quietly. Two maidservants respectfully greeted Lord Shield, their synchronized bow marking the start of a new day. Shield, moving toward the training grounds, observed and assessed how far the kingdom's army had advanced. A new guest, Brooks, appeared, and Shield immediately recognized him. It was the same merchant who had gotten into a minor trouble because of the Fae. Brooks apologized and recounted what had happened earlier. Shield listened patiently and decided to combine the conversation with breakfast to save time and remain polite. Brooks showed a set of golden tableware, rare, brought from afar. Shield examined it carefully, noting the craftsmanship and quality and admiring the elegance, but did not stop eating. The nobleman tasted the steak but felt it lacked both warmth and flavor. The cook nodded and offered rare truffle oil. The aroma impressed the nobleman. During the meeting, plans to dominate naval battles unexpectedly surfaced, and the influence of the merchant and his fleet became the key to hopes for victory over the Dark Elves. Brooks, a devoted servant who assured he remembers every road he has ever walked. These skills made him the perfect candidate for the next mission. Behind the usual wooden door emerged a mysterious question. Echo, do you love children? The tone hinted that a secret mission awaited ahead. When the door opened, three wary children with magic stood before them. The mission had truly begun. The children rushed forward with excitement, their shining faces illuminated the room. Shield watched them with relief, glad they were not causing a mess. The Guardian, proudly placing a hand on Dago's head, thanked Shield for the visit. Brooks explained that the trio had taken to exploring barrier magic and discovered unexpected potential within themselves. Akari stepped out first, insisting that this was not a real training, just a quick game, and suddenly unleashed a powerful burst of barrier energy that impressed everyone around. In a moment, her companion repeated the leg movement with controlled force. Another barrier flared, confirming her stable and reliable skill. Stepping aside, Shield observed their coordination. Each child had a unique role and they worked together like a trained unit. In the training room, the children proudly showed how they had grown. The barrier of one girl caused admiration. It was so strong it could compete with the power of Akin, and she confidently declared that she wanted to become Lord Marais. Unfazed, the dog released a blazing wave, and her rival instantly responded with a water barrier. Shield froze in admiration. Loomies, relying on instinct and talent, endowed her barriers with opposite proper to something rarely seen. A scream sounded and she flinched at his firm no, yet a spark of determination lit in her eyes. Meanwhile, Dago stepped in confidently. Barriers and flames merged in unison. He demonstrated extraordinary control, of proof that each child had found their place in this growing power. Floating automatic shields instantly attracted everyone's attention. Although they looked playful, they demonstrated their strategic importance. The guests were stunned by the raw potential of the children. Finally, their true goal was revealed: to forge a secret weapon for the looming Great War.